Hi, my name is Ulrich Krieger. I'm with the University of Mannheim. I'm the head of the German Internet Panel study. Today, I'm presenting the Mannheim Corona study, design, implementation, and data quality. On this slide, you see people who helped get this Corona study going. This is the Mannheim Corona study group. And I'm grateful for the input and work on the study. Today, I'm giving an overview of what the COVID-19 situation in Germany was during the time of the Mannheim Corona study, giving you a background of the German Internet Panel study, which is the parent study of the Corona study, and then present on methodology and results of the Corona study, results considering participation bias and the effect on the German Internet Panel. The German Internet Panel is funded by the German Research Foundation, and additional funding came from the German Federal Ministry for Labor and Social Affairs. So the first wave of COVID-19 in Germany, we had the first cases in early 2020. And in February 2020, February 28th, there was the installation of the crisis cabinet, so political decision makers took notice of the situation. On March 21, the first lockdown was decided and implemented and began. Mid-April saw the height of the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. This kind of subsided. The cases went down then, and the lockdown ended on May 14th. In mid-June, mid-June is considered to be the end of the first wave of the Mannheim Corona study. The Corona study was in the field during all of that time, so from March 20 to beginning of July, was covered of the fieldwork of the Mannheim Corona study, so 16 weeks of Corona study fieldwork. So let's first talk about the German Internet Panel. The German Internet Panel is a data collection infrastructure at the Collaborative Research Center 884 at the University of Mannheim. We're collecting data since 2012. So we have information on our respondents before the start of the Mannheim Corona study. We continued collecting data during the Mannheim Corona study, and also this data collection is still ongoing. As a matter of fact, we're in the field right now collecting more waves of the German Internet Panel, continuing data points now on the federal elections in Germany. The German Internet Panel has an online methodology, so there's a bi-monthly online questionnaire. The same sample is surveyed each wave. Field time, the time of the questionnaire is like 10-15 minutes. We have an mobile optimized design and quite high panel retention rate. The JIP is based on a probability sample. 3 samples were drawn independently using traditional multi-stage sampling. This is an offline recruitment, and the offline population was included. So, as we saw in the timeline, when the first lockdown was announced, we decided to repurpose our sample to measure the effects that the Corona situation, the lockdown, has on the society using our instrument. This was possible because the infrastructure was already in place. So we had the German Internet Panel, we had a group of researchers who were able to quickly adapt the survey and formulate question and research ideas that could be used in Mannheim Corona study. We had a core team of researchers readily available who volunteered their time to work on the Mannheim Corona study. This is a picture of the core group of the JIP team. We decided on a daily data collection. So to measure changes and external shocks, we decided to be in the field every day during these 16 weeks. We followed an open science approach. We published daily reports. We had special focus reports. We published all our results tables. We made the questionnaires available, and now the scientific use files of the data collection are available via the GESIS Data Archive in Cologne. So how did we come from the JIP to the MCS sample-wise? So on the top here in these grayish bars, you see how the sample of the JIP is set up. So you see these three independent sampling time points, 12, 14, and 18. All these three samples together now make up the JIP study. And in 2020, we took this sample and divided this into 8 groups and used this to invite respondents to the Mannheim Corona study. We invited 7 groups. We assigned them in a specific date of the week, so 7 days a week, 7 groups. Each group was invited at the same day for 16 weeks to participate in the Mannheim Corona study. The 8th group wasn't invited to the Mannheim Corona study. We didn't even mention the Mannheim Corona study to this 8th group. This is a control group. We use this to measure the effects the Mannheim Corona study invitation has on the JIP. More on that later. So let's look at results. First, panel participation. We invited close to 5,000 respondents to the Mannheim Corona study. 4,387 of them participated at least once in our study. Almost 2,000 participated in each and every invitation. So 16 weeks, 16 participations. 1,910 respondents participated in all these 16 waves. The mean response per week was 3,437. And this corresponds to a mean daily response rate of about 500 respondents. Over the 16 weeks, close to 5,500 completed questionnaires in the MCS, we consider this to be a great success, that we managed to motivate our respondents who were very used to this bi-monthly schedule to for a weekly data collection, for them to participate in a study each and every week, and also to continue participating in the German Internet Panel study. Let's look at response rates and biases. We have a graph here that consists of that has in the back in the grayish bars, you see the daily case numbers of COVID-19 cases in Germany, and we contrasted this with response rates, and which is this line, this zigzaggy line on the top half, and to the average absolute relative biases as a measure of total bias in our survey, which is the darker black line below in the graph. So we draw this graph to look at if COVID-19 cases, or the salience the topic has, how severe the situation is, has an impact on the participation in the JIP. Not in the JIP, but in the Mannheim Corona study. And if there is an effect on the bias, so we measured core characteristics to a benchmark, if the average absolute relative bias is influenced by the daily case counts. This is not the case. We have both measures of response rates and bias are stable. Response rates at about 65%, and the AARB at about 11%. When we look at the response rates, we see a slight drop off towards the end here of June and July. It maybe indicates that either respondents were tired of the survey, or the COVID-19 situation was deemed to be not that critical anymore. Remember this time in summer 2020 when we thought this was all over. the bias in the JIP and the MCS are the same. So we have a bias that carries over from the parent study. We do not add an additional bias from the Mannheim Corona study. We have well-representative characteristics and slightly biased characteristics and challenging characteristics, which is education and citizenship. And this is a picture that, or this is a finding that is very similar in all surveys that are based on probability sample. So I told you about the control group a couple of slides ago, and we used this control group here to plot the control group participation in dark gray and the light gray, the MCS participants, or the people that were invited to the MCS, their participation in the JIP. So we're talking about JIP participation here. So the idea was, or the worry was that this additional burden of inviting, of sending out more invitation that might be hurting the JIP. We see that this is not the case. There is a non-significant difference between control group and MCS participation. The MCS samples participation in the JIP is lower, but this is not a significant finding. If we look at JIP responses, so what we have here is 7 responses to JIP questions. We can look at if the MCS and the control group, if we have different responses here, if these are, if the samples are different. So maybe people participate. So this is a panel conditioning or a sample selection, selection analysis here. So having people invited to the Mannheim Corona study and talking about corona-related effects for 16 weeks. Does this has an effect on either selective dropout, or has this an effect on people's attitudes or their response styles? So we have things here like the satisfaction with government, left-right placement, or we have 2 measures of corona-related questions that we included in the JIP. So did you install the official COVID-19 tracing app, and are you using this app? And here we see a slight effect of people, of the MCS sample members responding more often that they have installed a tracing app. But we also see that these other differences are not significant. So there may be something here that needs to be examined closer, but maybe this is all just noise in the data. So in summary, we were able to quickly adapt the JIP as a measurement tool in times of crisis. We see this as a blueprint of how you can use such an infrastructure whenever the next natural experiment crisis comes up, whatever that may be in the future. We see that respondents are quite willingly to participate in such an endeavor. We have the same biases that we have in the parent study, so this carries over. And we don't see an effect of the additional response or the additional survey invitation burden to the parent study. This is all that I have today. I thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you in person next year.